Hi, this is my 3 best Waves plugins for sound design, and this is what they can do. Waves plugins have been a hot topic the last year or so, but there are some of their plugins that I used almost every day as a sound designer. In this video I introduce you to Scheps parallel particles, Z noise and R-bass. Let's dive into it. The first plugin I would like to show you is Scheps parallel particles. It has 4 generators, so it's kind of a simple plugin on the face of it. Just one for thickness, one for air, one for bite and one for sub. Thickness adds low weight to your sound. Air adds high energy to your sound. Bite adds aggression and transient to your sound. And sub adds low frequencies, sub-generated frequencies to your sound. So you just dial in a little bit of what you want, a little bit of air, a little bit of thickness, a little bit of bite and a little bit of sub. And then you can bypass each of these with the button underneath them. So as I said, on the face of it, really simple to use. But the most important parameter in this plugin is actually this on the side here. This is the input, because when you increase this, you get more out of each of these 4 generators. So you have a level input here, and this is metering of how hot your level input to the plugin is. So this will light up when you send sound through the plugin from green to yellow to red. And I found that when I get the most out of this plugin, I'm hovering somewhere around yellow into the red zone. When I'm too deep into the red zone, things start to just break apart more or less. But sometimes that's exactly what you want, so you can do that too, of course, but somewhere in the middle of yellow reddish is a good way to think of this plugin. So if we bypass it, we have just a clean AK-47 sound here. Really nice, but I like this plugin for these kind of moments when you have a sound that sounds really nice, but you want to add like a larger than life feeling to it, a little bit of over the top feeling to a sound. Then Scheps parallel particles is the first plugin that I go to. So I always start out with just setting the input level for this, and as I said, I checking this leveling meter for like yellow reddish, somewhere around there. All right, very reddish, something like that. And the first thing I think of this sound is that I would like some more sub, and you can set the frequencies that it will focus on underneath here. So somewhere around 55-60 Hertz I think could be nice for this. And we immediately hear that low sub comes in. Then a little bit of thickness to this. Yeah, feels great. And you see when the generator adds something to the sound, it lights up here, the tube down into the generator. A tiny bit of air maybe. If you go too far. A little bit of bite. And then just make sure to check the metering on your track, because this plugin makes sound go very loud. So without the plugin, we were somewhere around -6 dB on peak level. And now we're up to 2 decibels above. And it's important, this part, because otherwise you will get fooled by the loudness of the plugin and you think everything sounds awesome. So just adjust the output a little bit to see that you're hovering around the same peak as when you had the plugin bypassed. Now we're around there, -6 somewhere. So without the plugin, it sounded like this. With plugin, without, and with. So a really quick and effective way to dial in some larger than life feeling to other sounds. Really like this plugin for these purposes. The next plugin I would like to show you is Waves VST Noise. This is a rather old plugin at this stage. It was released somewhere around 2007 or something, and then originally it was released as just surgical noise removal. And at that time it was a really good one, but nowadays we have more precise tools for that. So if you want a surgical noise removal, just choose a different plugin of the modern ones that we have. But Waves VST Noise has become a staple around many sound designers to be the creative tool to create like UI sounds, sci-fi sounds, because it creates really weird and crazy artifacts when you drive it really hard. So the UI looks like this. It looks a bit complicated, but most of this you can ignore. You have a reduction meter over here, just how much you want the plugin to work, and then you have a threshold when you want the plugin to kick in. Then underneath here you have some release settings, some attack, transients, knee. I use these sometimes, but what I often do is just hit adaptive mode and play around with threshold and reduction, and this EQ here I more or less never use. But I'm convinced that you can do really cool stuff with it. So if you do, let me know in the comments below and let me know how you use it. That would be super cool to know. But I normally just focus on the threshold and some reduction. So let's dial in something here and just play around with it a little bit. Without the plugin, we have a sound that sounds like this. Massive trailer hit from Keep Forest, sounds amazing, but what happens if we just apply this VST Noise to it? It just transforms it into this tonal, crazy, artifacty sound that sounds really amazing in my opinion. And now when you play around with the threshold, nothing is left. Just the tonal stuff. And when you dial it down, you get more of that noise back in again. So a really fun and creative tool, even though it wasn't its purpose from the get-go. So yeah, I can highly suggest it for all kinds of sci-fi sounds, all kinds of UI sounds. Before we check out the final plugin, I have a gift for you. There is a free sample pack linked in the description below. This is loaded with cinematic sound effects that you can drag and drop into your products or process further with your own plugins. The third and final plugin I would like to show you is R-Bass or Renaissance Bass. This is a bass enhancer that adds harmonics to your low end of your sound. This will increase the perceived loudness of it and you will hear it more clearly. So if you listen to the sound on a laptop speaker and you can't hear the bass or low end of your sound, R-Bass can fix that by adding those harmonics and extend the bass range up into higher regions of the sound, and then you will hear it on laptop speakers or iPhone speakers or something like that. So it's a really handy tool to use in very many cases. So like this, we have an explosion sound. Sounds great. But to me it lacks a little bit of that low end weight. So let's try use R-Bass on it. The interface here is quite simple. You have the gain knob here. So I usually dial this back a little bit because the plugin sounds really crappy if you clip it, so I usually dial it back a little bit. Then you have a frequency range down here, and this is where the sub harmonics or the bass harmonics will be focused and start at, and then you will extend upwards from there. So explosion like this, maybe around 50-60 hertz or something. And then you have this big dial here in the middle, that's the intensity. So this is just how much you want of it. So we dial it back a little bit to begin with and see how it sounds. Without. Sounds okay. Maybe push it up a little bit more. And now we hear it really clear. Without. And with. And it just adds that low end to the sound and makes it sound like beefier, fuller, and more weight to the sound, and of course then more audible on smaller speakers. So this is great, but a lot of cases I want to extend the bass downwards too, and this is one of those cases. I feel like we can add some subharmonics to this also, and then I don't use R-bass because it just adds the harmonics upwards from the set frequency that you have. But then I combine that with the fourth, like a bonus plugin for this video, the Submarine. So this is a subharmonics generator. So instead of the R-bass that goes upwards, this goes downwards. So the user face looks like this. You have two sub generators, the big ones here in the middle. The first one goes down 1 octave, and then the second one goes down 2 octaves underneath. Then you have a range here, and then you have the output and the mix. You can drive it and you can use dynamics too, and you have mono sub, and that's all good, but the main player for this plugin is the mix here. I really like to have a mix knob where I can set 100% and just hear what the sub generators do, because it's a tricky thing with both R-bass and Submarine is that you often dial in a little bit too much of it. And if you don't have a dry wet where you can like isolate this part of the sound, I tend to like dial in too much of that bass because you push it too far when you always hear it together with other sounds. So I try to monitor it in 100% wet, and then I dial in the dry part, and then I just try to adjust that to sit well together instead of pushing the sub underneath the full sound. That's just my workflow. If you have a different workflow, let me know. I would love to hear how you work with this, but I really like to just start with 100% wet. So let's start with that and just use the sub generator 2, the second one, the low one first, and see how it sounds. And I can see that something has happened, but I can't hear anything. So let's bring in an analyzer, and we can see it adds that super low sub. So a good thing with this plugin is that you can dial in semitones here where you want this generator to hit. So let's dial it up a little bit. Now we can start to hear that. Yeah, that sounds good. Really low sub, but still audible. And then we can use the first sub generator here, and we can that sounds good. Maybe dial that up a little bit. Yeah, that's nice. And now I just start to dial this back to maybe somewhere around 30%, 40% together. We're clipping the output a little bit, so just dial that back. So without the plugin, and with. Yes, really beefy sub now. So if we bypass both R-bass and Submarine, the original sound was this. Very mid-rangey explosion sound, and then we enable both of them. Super massive low end. So really great plugins. R-bass to enhance the bass region of the sound and make it more audible, and Submarine to just extend it downwards and create those really low subharmonics to the sound. Really great in combo. So that was my top 3 Waves plugins for sound design. One for larger than life feeling, one for creative processing, and one for bass extension. As a sound designer, you sooner or later will need a show reel. You can check out this video that introduces you how to create one. And feel free to download that free cinematic sound effects pack that I mentioned earlier, so you have some free sounds to play around with. Alright, that's it for this video. Take care of each other out there, and I see you in the next one.